Senator Richard Blumenthal has consistently called the nomination and confirmation of now Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett illegitimate. But why, if it's not unconstitutional?
Never before, after July in an election year, has any justice been confirmed.
But that's because such a scenario has never presented itself before.
Justice Ginsburg passed away, leaving a vacancy. Under the Constitution, he is certainly allowed, the President of the United States is certainly allowed to make a recommendation, and he did, and a nomination.
However, in 2018, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, said if a Supreme Court opening occurred during the last year of President Trump's term, quote, we'll wait to the next election.
Democrats never would have abused power in this way.
After Justice Barrett's confirmation last night, Democratic Congresswomen Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted the same three words: expand the court. In response, Themis Claridis, the Connecticut legislature's House Republican leader, stated, quote, just like with the debate on the Electoral College and removing the filibuster, etc., when the Democrats can't win by following the rules, they change the rules.
You know, when you're talking about the structure of the Supreme Court, I mean, you're getting into the crown jewels of our country, and you've got to really handle with care.
These ideas have been around for quite a while, and they deserve to be considered and debated.
Amy Coney Barrett, now the fifth woman elevated to the Supreme Court in its 231-year history. I'm Tony Terzi, Fox 61 News.
Tony.